With Elden Ring's Shadow of the Erdtree DLC just a bit away, I'm sure that some of you out there will be picking up Elden Ring now and may be wondering how exactly you should get ready for the DLC and, well, how you should actually start the game in the first place. Elden Ring can seem a bit daunting and confusing, especially because a lot of Elden Ring's open world is structured around pure exploration, with you not really getting many markers on the map. Pretty much, if you're picking up a questline, you need to go and explore the world to uncover the next phase of the questline. It's not a hand-holding game, and that can seem a bit intimidating. However, there are a lot of ways to make Elden Ring a lot less complicated, so here are 10 tips for your early hours in Elden Ring to make your journey through the lands between a lot more palatable, as well as some general advice. When you first start up Elden Ring, you're going to be faced with a decision to make, which class you want to start with. Of course, there are quite a lot of classes in Elden Ring, but I'm here to let you know that technically it doesn't really matter. Sure, your starting class augments your skill points early on, but as you progress in the game, you can pretty much just ditch what you started with and go on your own path entirely. Your starting class is a good introduction to Elden Ring, but you can orient yourself to whatever build and whatever skills you want later on. Still, when you're first starting out, try to pick the class that has its skills oriented more towards something you'd be at least interested in. Basically, do you find yourself more interested in magic, more in strength and head-on combat? What do you want out of Elden Ring? Or at least, what do you think you'd like out of Elden Ring? From there, pick the class that seems the most interesting to you. For my first playthrough, I went with the Confessor for a blend between strength and magic, as I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted out of Elden Ring. I did end up using some magic, but I was mostly strength-based. If you want to go for an entirely pure magic build, I would pick the Astrologer or any other class that has the highest intelligence and arcane in the beginning. The Warrior class is a really good starter class. Pretty much whatever you want, you can pick. Just know that you don't have to stick to it later on. Elden Ring thrusts you right in the middle of it all, with you coming out of the darkness of dungeons and into the beautiful world of Limgrave, the real starting area of your playthrough. Limgrave is a pretty big region, but as you'll see, the entire map of Elden Ring is pretty large in and of itself. Of course, this may seem a bit daunting at first, but my recommendation is that you focus on exploration right away. Don't worry about fighting any bosses just yet, because you will definitely not be ready within your first couple hours of gameplay. I had to get to level 20 before I really was able to take on Margit the Fell Omen. My point being, don't focus on bosses. Not in the beginning. As you explore the world of Elden Ring, you want to try to find unique objects, search for weapons and armors and more. Basically, the point is try to build yourself up before you really go on and tackle the main quest lines of Elden Ring. I know this may kind of seem like a duh thing, but there are actually a ton of bosses in Elden Ring, and there are a lot that you don't even need to fight. But I do recommend that you get around to fighting them anyways. If you're looking to play as much as you can in Elden Ring, which is very hard to do, so don't feel discouraged if you can't figure out how to 100% the game in your first playthrough, then you want to go for the bosses to the maximum extent. However, do note that if you don't feel like you're ready to face these bosses, there's no consequences on the story overall to fighting or not fighting them. Now, there are some neat rewards that you can get for fighting them, such as the Grafted Blade Greatsword that you get for fighting Leonian Misbegotten. So my point is, fighting them doesn't actually cause any negatives for you, and it is a pretty good challenge, and it does help you get better in the game. Although you started out with a class, like I said in tip 1, your build can easily be subject to change as you go throughout Elden Ring. From the beginning, you'll find that Elden Ring's class gives you a good introduction to a certain playstyle, but maybe you're miserable with that playstyle. Maybe for you, you'd like to go for more magic stuff, or you want more strength stuff, or you want to focus on bleed, or whatever it is that you want to focus on. My recommendation is to figure this out as early as possible, because the more runes you allocate to something you don't want, the harder it's going to be to change later. I always recommend you try to increase your health points first by leveling up vigor, and then focus on some of the other things. But you want to know what it is that you want to be increasing. If you're going for things like great swords and whatnot, focus on your strength first. You can't wield the great sword if your strength is rock bottom. If you want magic, intelligence and arcane is where you want to go for. My point is, your class does not have to be what you think you're sticking with at the beginning, but you should figure this stuff out in the early hours of the game to orient your exploration around these things and avoid when you get to a point where you need like tens of thousands of runes to upgrade your levels. I think a lot of the time with open world games, we tend to sometimes overlook side quests in favor of taking out the storyline. However, in Elden Ring's case, the storyline is based around the major bosses, but you'd be making a pretty big mistake if you ignore those side quests. Elden Ring's side quests are actually very important because they help show you the way Elden Ring really works. It's hard to start them and it's hard to finish them, but there are guides out there that explain these side quests. My point being, the more quests you do, the better you are at actually exploring the game. Plus, you can get some really cool rewards with these side quests like runes, weapons, and more. Furthermore, the side quests will often present you with bosses to face off against. These lesser bosses are good preparation for the major bosses and give you a good indication of what it'll be like to face off against the big guns as you go throughout Elden Ring. Elden Ring's world is populated by many dungeons, caverns, catacombs, and more. My recommendation? Do them. Alright, they may seem intimidating and even complicated at first, what with gargoyles that can induce the bleed effect on you, running at you, and dropping down from the roof on you, but the dungeons are actually really good ways to prepare for even more of the major boss fights. As you go throughout Elden Ring, you'll often find some sort of entrances to caverns and more hidden locations, and you should definitely go through them. Once you're inside, you should finish the dungeon, but once you finish it, you'll be able to get unique rewards like Ashes of War, which can support you during boss fights, weapons, runes, and more. Plus, taking out these dungeons gives you a way to get closer to actually completing Elden Ring and learn the game even more. Runes aren't an easy task to get in Elden Ring. Sure, you'll find some lying around here and there, but that's not really enough to get you the amount of runes you really need to upgrade your stats and fight bosses in this game. The best thing I can say is that you're gonna need to farm runes as you go throughout Elden Ring. There are many places where you can farm runes, but the point is you want to redo these zones multiple times to get more, which in turn will let you get higher upgrades in your stats. There are multiple places where you can farm in Elden Ring, one of which is Len's Rise, where you just run down this path until a giant boulder comes rolling at you, jump out of the way, the boulder falls off the cliff, and bam, instant runes. You can do this over and over and over and just keep getting runes, of course. There's also places where a lot of Godric soldiers are at. Killing them over and over will net you a ton of runes as well. Fighting trolls and larger random enemies that spawn in the world is also not a bad idea, because you can get a lot of runes from these. They're just hard to fight if you're at a low level, so be warned. Vare's questline also can get you a great rune farming spot, but I wouldn't focus on this too much in the early hours of your playthrough because it is complicated, so worry about this later. Elden Ring's map is littered with tons of cool and great weapons that you can actually get pretty early on. The thing is, you want to actually go for these weapons as early as you can because the better your weapons are, the better your gameplay will feel. I'll give you one great early weapon that you can find, and it's the Twin Blade. I know a lot of people talk about this one, but there's a reason. It's actually a really good blade to get. To find the Twin Blade, you need to go to the Dragon Burnt Ruins, go to an underground cellar surrounded by 4 walls, the entrance to which is in the southeast building. There you'll find the chest with the blade. There's also a lot of other weapons you can find, and there's a few weapon types out there, and it really depends on your focus in the game. If you're going for magic builds, focus on finding a bigger staff first. If you want strength, get bigger blades and fast. There's a lot of random stuff that exists in Elden Ring that you may look at and go, huh? But trust me, that thing may be extremely necessary for you. Smithing stones are one of those things, and there's quite a good number of them lying about, but you need to be careful. They're sometimes surrounded by enemies or they're in random places, but smithing stones are actually really vital if you want a fighting chance in Elden Ring. Smithing stones let you basically upgrade your weapon. You'll see there's a numerical value next to the weapon you're using, like +1 or +2 and so on. To get your weapon up, you use smithing stones to increase that value, which in turn increases the power of your weapons and makes it easier to fight against bosses. You can use smithing stones at the smithing table in the Church of Marika or at the Round Table Hold if you're that far in already. If you're just starting out in Elden Ring, you'll probably find yourself impatiently wanting to get to the end of the game. For some reason. If you're in that spot, I'm just letting you know that the road to finishing up Elden Ring is not an easy or short one. Elden Ring is a game based around exploration, discovery, and learning. As with most From Software Souls games, you're meant to learn from your mistakes, approach bosses with new strategies, and explore the world before you really tackle the big storyline. That means that the journey you undertake in Elden Ring is a longer one than other games. By all means, this should not discourage you from playing, but I want you to know that Elden Ring is a game best enjoyed slow and steady, when you can really explore the entire world and see everything it has to offer, unlock things, and challenge yourself. With Souls games, challenge is, in my opinion, the best part because actually defeating a boss is satisfying. You may die a ton of times, but when you figure it out, it feels like something amazing just happened. But you need to learn and you need to strategize, and that's really what I think makes Elden Ring an amazing game to play. And with that being said, thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe with notifications set to all so you never miss out on a single upload. Comment below what your thoughts on Elden Ring are and if you're excited for the upcoming DLC. Don't forget to check out our website for gaming news, entertainment, and more. The link to that, as well as all our other important links, are in the description below. Thanks again, and I'll see you all in the next one.